You pretty boy Floyd?
I'm Charles Arthur Floyd.
This is for Kansas City, boy.
Charles Arthur Floyd, American bank robber, gangster, public enemy number one. You guys might know him as Pretty Boy Floyd. Today we're taking a deep dive into the story and the locations that played a pivotal role in the last days of his life. This is Oddity Acres. What is up, spooky people? Welcome to another episode of Oddity Acres. Today we are in East Liverpool, Ohio, and we are checking out a really cool location. A little bit of true crime, a little bit of American gangster, American bank robber. You know him as Pretty Boy Floyd, and we have a story for you. This is fantastic. We are sitting here on the property. It's a part of the Beaver Creek State Park, but this is where federal agents gunned down Pretty Boy Floyd. Check it out. This story all takes place right here on this piece of property. It's beautiful out here. Just gorgeous. Now, if you don't know who Pretty Boy Floyd is, he is an American bank robber who operated really throughout the 30s and committed most of his crimes in the West and Central states. Now, he was really known as a bank robber, but he committed a lot of crimes, and a lot of them were brutal in nature, like his alleged involvement in the Kansas City massacre. And despite all of that going on, he was viewed by the public, really in a good light because, he was known to, when he would rob banks, to burn mortgage documents, freeing people of their debts. I mean, this is the Great Depression era. So, he was kind of like the Robin Hood of the Great Depression in a lot of people's eyes. This led to a life on the run and his ultimate demise right here on the property. This is where he took his last breath. There is a marker, which I'm going to show you here in a second, but I kind of want to get into the story and tell you a little bit about who Charles Arthur Floyd was. Now, Charles Arthur Floyd was born in Bartow, Georgia in 1904, and then later moved with his family to Atkins, Oklahoma in 1911. Now, he was first arrested at age 18 for stealing $3.50 from a local post office. Roughly today, that would be about $50. 3 years after that, he was arrested for payroll robbery in St. Louis, Missouri, and he was sentenced to 5 years in prison. However, he only served 3 after getting released on parole. Soon after that, he started to commit a lot of crimes and robberies with the criminals of the Kansas City underworld. And that's really where his bank robberies and all the things that he's known for kind of started out. In 1929, Floyd was wanted on numerous cases involving robbery, murder. He was arrested in Kansas City, Colorado, finally Akron, Ohio, Toledo, Ohio, and finally down in Sylvania, Ohio, where he was sentenced. Now, these arrests were in connection to the murder of an Akron police officer, and he was actually sentenced to 15 years in the Ohio State Penitentiary. However, he was able to escape and make his way into the Ohio countryside. In 1933, he became one of the primary suspects in a horrible tragedy known as the Kansas City Massacre, which resulted in the deaths of 4 police officers. Now, historical facts tend to lean towards the fact that he was not involved. Whether he was an accomplice or not, we don't really know. But he absolutely, to the day he died, said that he was not involved in that massacre. And in fact, in June of 1933, he wrote a letter to the Kansas City Police Department. And that letter said, "Dear Sirs, I, Charles Arthur Floyd, want to make it known that I did not participate in the Kansas City Massacre. Charles Floyd." Now, following the death of John Dillinger, J. Edgar Hoover named Pretty Boy Floyd public enemy number 1 and set his sights on his capture. And that brings us to the point of the story that takes place at this location. Pretty Boy Floyd and one of his accomplices, Adam Ricchetti, was heading down this way from Buffalo, New York, and around 3 a.m. on October 18th, 1934, crashed into a tree. The car lost control, and the car was completely disabled. Now, after dawn on October 19th, a motorist and his son-in-law were driving by and noticed two men in suits on the side of the road. And he thought that was quite suspicious, so he contacted the Wellsville, Ohio Police Department. So the police chief and several officers went to investigate, and upon arrival were fired on by Pretty Boy Floyd. And this resulted in the injuries of the police chief and several officers. Now, Floyd and Ricchetti took off towards the wood line, on the run. And after several backup officers arrived, Adam Ricchetti was captured. But Pretty Boy Floyd was still on the run, and a manhunt ensued. Now, news of the manhunt of Pretty Boy Floyd traveled very quickly, and several local police departments, including several cities around this area, and the FBI mobilized and came to this area very quickly. Now, on October 22nd, 1934, Pretty Boy Floyd was able to hitch a ride to East Liverpool, Ohio, where he was able to meet up with a friend, Charles Joy, at his pool hall and obtain food and clothing and a little bit of shelter and rest. Now, Floyd was confronted by a bunch of lawmen when he was leaving the pool hall, and he attempted to flee on foot to this very location right here. Now, there are numerous stories about what happened here on this site by the local police departments, by the FBI, but in a 1979 issue of Time magazine, the East Liverpool captain, Chester Smith, had quite a story to tell about what happened and what he saw. Now, Chester Smith was credited with firing upon Pretty Boy Floyd first, firing 2 rounds and deliberately wounding him with his .32 caliber Winchester. Now, according to Smith's account, after the 2 shots were fired, hitting Pretty Boy Floyd, he hit the ground and did not regain footing. Now, at that point, the lead investigator for the FBI, his name was Purvis, ordered everyone to back away from Floyd. He began to ask him questions, wanted to get some answers, and just received curses. He was not going to get anything. And it's said by Smith that at that point, Purvis ordered his partner Hollis to open fire, and he opened fire into Floyd as he was on the ground with a submachine gun. When Smith was asked in the interview if this was, a big part of an FBI cover-up, he said, sure it was. He said, they didn't want everyone to know, the public to know, that this is the way that Floyd went down. Now, obviously, over time, there's a lot of disputes to the story, different historical documents that state one thing and state another thing. Different law enforcement agencies, different police officers, different people were all on scene at different times. So the story can get jumbled, but there is no disputing that on this property is where Pretty Boy Floyd took his last breath. There are countless movies that depict Floyd's last moments right here on this property. And it's crazy just to be standing here where it all happened.
On October 22nd, we found Pretty Boy Floyd.
So this is the Ohio historical marker that they put up here, and it says, the death of Pretty Boy Floyd. In these fields, formerly the site of Ellen Conkle Farm, notorious Depression-era desperado Charles Arthur Pretty Boy Floyd met his death at the hands of federal agents and members of the East Liverpool Police Department on October 22nd, 1934. Floyd's criminal career as a bank robber who reputedly committed a dozen murders, most police officers, caused him to be designated public enemy number 1 only 3 months earlier by J. Edgar Hoover. And it continues here on the other side. It says, believed to be returning from his home in Cookson Hills of Oklahoma after a year of hiding, Floyd and his partner, Adam Ricchetti, had attracted the attention of local police near Wellsville, Ohio. A shootout ensued, resulting in Ricchetti's capture and Floyd's escape. Agent Melvin Purvis supervised a 3-day manhunt, which ended here when 8 lawmen ended Floyd's life of violence. Pretty Boy's body was placed on public display in East Liverpool before being returned to Oklahoma for burial. I want to mention, too, there are bullet holes in this sign. This is insane. I mean, how fitting for, the historical marker for Pretty Boy Floyd. Bullet holes. Check it out, though. So crazy, the history that happens right here. I always say this, when you go to places like this, like the history right below your feet, you wouldn't even know if that sign wasn't there. You wouldn't even know. Wow. Right here, this field. It's where everything took place. How crazy is this? I mean, back in the 30s, this would have been a farm, obviously, with a barn and a homestead. And that's kind of what Pretty Boy Floyd was doing. He was on the run. He was kind of meeting with the public. I mean, there were people that were feeding him and clothing him and kind of hiding him from, you know, law enforcement agents. Unfortunately, this is the property that it all ended at. Now, the roadway is only 100 yards in front of me, and Floyd would have made a run for the wood line right here. And just on the other side of this hill is where he took his last breaths. We are walking where Floyd would have been running. Right here. This is so crazy cool. What a cool piece of history. You know what's crazy too is you can still see depressions in the land. You know, I don't know if that's where a barn was, but you can see where structure was for sure. It feels so weird that like right below my feet could be where Pretty Boy Floyd was laying down, taking his last breaths. He said to the officers, "You got me. You hit me twice." Pretty crazy. Right here. This open piece of land in rural Ohio. Who would have known? Too cool. Love it. Just imagine like being on the run, like you're wanted, you know you're gonna go to jail for life, you got FBI agents on you, and you are in the point where you are gonna be caught, and you're taking off to this field. Guns are blowing off behind you, bullets whizzing past your ears. Sounds like a movie. It was movies. They made it into movies. But that was the life of Charles Arthur Floyd. Pretty cool. This is awesome. So right behind me is the Serges House. Now, right now it's a bed and breakfast, but back in the day, this was actually the city's funeral home. And this is the location that they brought Floyd's body to, where he was embalmed and where his death mask was casted. His body was on display in this building right here. Very cool. This is the original town funeral home. Now, after being displayed and viewed here in this house, his body was sent back to Oklahoma, where they had the funeral for him, and it was, to this day, the largest funeral that has ever happened in Oklahoma. Around 40,000 people attended. Now, as I said, this is a bed and breakfast now, but up until a few years ago, the death mask was actually still on display here down in the basement. I believe there was an old mortuary museum here, something small that kind of paid tribute to the funeral home and, you know, the history of the building. But this holds a lot of history in American culture, and, you know, obviously the story of Pretty Boy Floyd, and, you know, this all culminated in this small town of East Liverpool, Ohio. Pretty cool. This is an awesome place to check out. I'm gonna have to stay here sometime. That would be an awesome experience. I'll vlog that for you as well. We'll do like a follow-up. But check it out, the Serges House. All right, that's going to about do it for another episode of Oddity Acres. Thank you guys for going on this journey with me. Thank you for tuning into the story about Pretty Boy Floyd, one of America's greatest gangsters, bank robbers. This was a fun trip, and I really enjoyed this. This is something I wanted to do for a while, and so I'm glad you guys tuned in with me for the first vlog of 2024. So, coming to you from the Serges House, the former funeral home, in East Liverpool, Ohio. We'll see you next time on another episode of Oddity Acres. Stay scared, and happy Halloween.